Hi, all. Welcome to Unleashing Happiness with Cecilia Hendricks. On today's episode, we're going to review your identity and the state that you dwell in, the ways that you can become a little bit more emotionally intelligent by naming your emotions, a couple little breathing exercises that'll help you come into the present moment, and then also working on your list of joys and incorporating those in your life. Hey y'all, it's Cecilia Hendricks with Unleashing Happiness, the podcast where we're going to discuss all ways that you can change your mindset, change your life, change your habits. Hi all, this is Cecilia Hendricks with Unleashing Happiness. This is technically going to be my second episode of the podcast. The first one, though, I launched essentially only on Spotify. And since then, I have learned kind of some ins and outs of getting this channel out on some other platforms. So this may be episode 1, depending on what platform you're hearing it, or episode 2, but going to be named again episode 1 on Spotify, just because that's the way we're going to roll with it. Just continue to learn and go as we learn. So I really wanted to address on this episode was some things about talking about your identity. A big portion of the way that I have been focused on not only my own journey, but sharing with other people's journeys is that the most important thing you can do for yourself is to figure out how you identify and the ways that maybe you identify that you would like to change. If you are a law of attraction or mainly law of assumption follower, specifically Neville Goddard, which I am very familiar with, you may have also heard the term states. I think sometimes when people are looking for ways of saying, hey, this is your state, what state are you dwelling, etc., when you listen and read those teachings, it can be very confusing to try to figure out, okay, what exactly is it that they're talking about? What is my state? How do I identify it? And then how do I change it? So I'm here to share that not only can you identify your state much easier than you may think, it comes down to identifying, honestly, your identity, which can be all encompassing. It absolutely is. You can have different parts of you that all equal up to your identity. And all of those are essentially different states that you're dwelling in, depending on how you see yourself, the way that you react to life, and the way that you would describe yourself. So essentially, when somebody says using an I am statement, it's actually very simple. I can say, I am a mother. That is part of my identity. That is a state that I dwell in. If I say that I am poor or I am unhealthy, that is also part of my identity in a way that I am viewing myself as a human being, which also then goes back to saying this is my state. This is where I'm dwelling. I go over a lot of that because when I first started this and I was reading about Neville Goddard and ways to kind of change your life, and even books like, Changing the Habit of Being Yourself by Dr. Joe Dispenza, I was really confused on what it meant to be in a state. I was also confused because there was parts that maybe I didn't want to change. There's things about myself that I really love and admire, and I didn't want those to change. And so I wanted to try to figure out how to upgrade my life, but also continue to hold on to some pieces of my identity that I truly loved and really thought highly of. And I would not want to lose those. And the best thing that I found is that you absolutely can do that. I can definitely identify in one form, as a mother and as a really good mother, but also identify as a woman who takes care of herself. Kind of a personal story looking back on my life is that I went through a time where I maybe was not the happiest. Actually, I can say I absolutely was not the happiest. I felt really lost. I didn't feel like I had much of an identity outside of the home. And even the one that was inside the home, I struggled to try to figure out, where do I fit in? Who actually am I? How do I feel comfortable in my own skin? And how do I deal with maybe some of the trauma from my life and my childhood especially, but still remain true kind of to myself. So there was behaviors that I would have looking back on life that I'm like, okay, so maybe at the time I thought this was me just expressing myself, but really it was expressing trauma or trying to hide trauma. And so I do that a lot. You will likely pick up on it that I definitely use humor in that. And I think there's a healthy way to do that and there's an unhealthy way to do that. And there are parts of me that I didn't want to lose, but there was parts of me that I really wanted to heal and I wanted to do better in life. I wanted to feel more loved. And I wanted to stop having some of the emotional reactions that I did in life. I really struggled to not lash out. So I would have a habit of lashing out and then shutting down. So real quick of like, here's my real quick kind of jab at you, and then I'm going to pull it back, and now I'm not going to talk to you, and I'm going to kind of build a wall, and I'm going to pretend that everything's okay. I think me and likely my siblings, I don't really want to talk to them or about them without them being here to really discuss it themselves. But I think all of us have this like almost perfectionism type of behavior where to the external world, we want everything to look perfect. But a lot of times that comes at the expense of us being able to express ourselves. So that was a part of my identity that I wanted to work on. How can I have healthy boundaries for me, express my emotions in a healthy way, but also feel and process my emotions in a healthy way? This was a huge part of my identity, and it felt a little bit like an identity crisis for me of like, oh my gosh, this is not something that I'm doing well. How can I make sure that I'm, in touch more with my emotions and the way that I am behaving with those emotions? And I'll definitely get into that. Something that I have read a ton about and really worked on for me has been my emotional intelligence and really tapping into not only what I'm feeling, but how to process what I'm feeling, how to share what I'm feeling, and to really have boundaries with the people that are in my life, either my family, my spouse, friends, people that kind of interact with me, maybe in my career, professional life, but most importantly with myself. I really had to say, these are the boundaries I have with myself. And a couple of those boundaries are around doing what I tell myself I'm going to do. So if I say I'm going to do something, I need to hold my word to myself. I would be really upset with a friend if every time they told me they were going to do something, especially if it was to take care of me and do something that was for my, benefit and health, which I know sounds selfish, but that's kind of the way that life is, in my opinion. And they kept not doing it. I would be upset with them and say, why do you keep not doing this? Like, what is the reason that you can't show up for me? And when I took a look at my personal identity and the state that I was dwelling in, I realized I'm actually not showing up for myself. I break a lot of promises to myself. I say I'm going to take better care of myself, and then I don't follow through with it. I say that I'm going to do things that are good for me, and then I don't continue them. And I really needed to focus on why that was happening and what were the habits that were behind that. What was the reason behind that? And what were some simple things that I could do to work on those? But that's the beauty of this. We all have the ability to really look inward, which is one of the best things that you can do. Everything has to start within. As cheesy as maybe that sounds, and as much as I think we're hearing that over and over, and sometimes, unfortunately, I think the message has been quite convoluted or maybe confused in the way that it's being shared, it really does start with you. What you feel internally is projected back to you from the world. So whether you want to believe that that is positive mindset, law of attraction, vibration, law of assumption, law of belief, or just simply the way that kind of the cards and the dominoes fall, it doesn't matter the belief system behind it. All that matters is that you have the belief in yourself. And so having this small piece of hope that you can change this and that you can start focusing on the way that you're reacting and the way that you're viewing the world and feeling about yourself on the internal is going to completely start to reflect to you from the world. And I can tell you this because I've watched it firsthand. I have watched as my life has changed and improved as I've improved the way that I not only viewed myself, but I spoke to myself, the tools that I was learning to make sure that I was tapping into my emotions, and not just tapping into them, but really identifying them and saying, okay, this is what I'm feeling. Why am I feeling that way? I began to get really curious about myself. I've spoken about the book More Yourself by Sarah Waters multiple times, not only on my YouTube channel, in my first podcast, and then also on my blog, because it really opened up my eyes reading this book about how there's these parts of me and there's really no bad parts. Every part of me is there because it's to protect me on some sort of level. And when I become really curious about that and I start asking myself, okay, why do you react this way? Why do you identify this way? If this is something that you are maybe not enjoying, ask why then you're continuing the habit. Because I promise you at that point, it's truly just a habit. There's habits that we have that are really built very deeply inside of us, and they're from beliefs that we've received from some part of our life. There's no way that we act, behave, think that has not come from some sort of experience that we've had. I had to learn what hot meant. So if I was going to touch something that was hot, either my mother yelling out at me, don't touch that, it's hot, or by my hand touching it and realizing, oh, that's painful. That's an experience that I've had to learn. So now when maybe my hand gets a little too close to the fire, I pull it back more quickly because I've learned how to protect myself. So our emotional needs work in the same way. The more that we kind of have an experience and we've learned this experience and like, oh, I don't want to cuss actually on here. Oh, dang, that really hurts. That was not pleasant. I did not like that. The more that you have a part of you that just starts to learn ways to protect yourself. The unfortunate thing is that when some of those parts start to overreact or get kind of turned up too high, I guess is the better way to say that, it becomes difficult to realize, is this a sort of trauma response or is this a true, I'm protecting myself from the fire response? And it can be different from person to person. It can even be different from day to day. So it's important to start kind of leaning into that curiosity about yourself. If you have a reaction to something that happens to you and it's a knee-jerk, let's say angry, rage-filled reaction, the more that you can take a step back and one, name that emotion. I've talked about this before as well. It's the name it, tame it technique. It's been scientifically proven that if you are able to stop yourself, take a minute, think, what is this emotion that I'm feeling? Okay. And name it. Just name it and try to really get broad in your emotions. Go beyond just anger. And if that's all that you have at that time, fine. Name it anger and know, okay, it's anger. And then ask yourself, why am I feeling this anger? Think about the situation that you're in instead of thinking about the event over and over. One of the best things you can do for yourself is figure out how to stop the dwelling loop. So to take a moment, name what you're feeling and think about the situation. Why would this situation cause this type of reaction for you? And sometimes it's really clear and super easy to say, well, yeah, I know exactly why I feel this way. I know exactly why I'm so angry. I know exactly why I'm full of rage. And when you really start to pay attention and get curious, you'll realize that all of those feelings are because it's something close to you. So we all have things that are important to us. They actually are things that make up our identity. So like for me, I've mentioned I'm a mother. Mine would be my children. Something that threatens my children is going to elicit a very strong response in me. I'm also very family oriented. I absolutely love my family. They're very important to me. Seeing them be successful and happy is extremely important to me. So when something threatens them, it's going to get a response out of me. But one thing that I've used as an example before in some other episodes is I'm not super politically driven. I pay attention to it. I like to do my part. I definitely vote, but I'm not super politically driven. I'm not personally offended if you choose a candidate that's not the candidate that I would have chosen. I'm open to hearing what you have to say about that. So if somebody threatens or maybe makes a comment about my political beliefs, I'm not quite as up in arms as someone else may be. And I appreciate the fact that they are. The reason that they behave that way is because it's something so important to them. And that's, their reaction is because it's important to them. So part of this name attainment is then to also get curious. Okay, why do I feel this way? What about my identity is being threatened here that I feel like I need to protect in the way that I'm behaving or the way I'm lashing out? Now, you might be thinking, okay, that's a little easier said than done, that you want me to stop in this moment and actually think about something, name my emotion. And I get it. I've been in the exact same position in the past when I was much more reactive. But like anything, the more that you practice, the better this will get. The more that you're able to really take a step back, even if your knee-jerk reaction is one of frustration, anger, rage, lashing out, you'll soon find that you're like, wow, I'm actually getting better at this the more that you do it. One of the breathing exercises that I have found to be very beneficial is that you take a deep breath in. I mean, deep, really fill your lungs. And at the top of that breath, as you're holding it, you take another quick breath in. So you've filled your lungs, you're holding it at the top, and then you do another quick breath in, pretty much almost where it feels like you can't get any more air in there, and then let it out. So I know I'm on a podcast, you can't see me, but the way that this would sound would be, oh. Hopefully that doesn't sound too weird recording. We'll see. But I do that a couple times, and I like to do that exercise a couple times in the morning as well. So even when I'm not upset, but it's a really quick way. There's something about it, and I'm sure that there's some better research behind this, but there's something about it that just kind of relaxes you and brings you back into awareness, and tapping back into that present moment and the awareness, as cheesy as that also might sound, and you may feel like it's a bit woo-woo in the way that you're doing things because everybody's saying, oh, you have to live in the present moment. You have to live in the present moment. But those moments are truly the only ones that we have. Anything else that you're thinking about, fretting about, stressing about is actually a moment that's not existing right now. And I remind myself of that a lot. If I get upset about something that hasn't happened, or I'm like replaying it over and over in my brain, I'll ask myself, why are you doing that? You get to pick actually what you live in your brain. Nobody else is in there. You don't have to share it with anybody else. So nobody else gets to know if you're, or think that you're Looney Tunes or whatever. But you can actually direct your thoughts and your awareness. And the more that you bring yourself back to the present moment, why am I stressing about this? Why am I concerned with this? I have a life that I'm living right now that's really beautiful, and there's something really great going on, and there's nothing wrong at this very moment. The more that you start to calm down, it creates this very weird sense of peace. And I use the word weird just because I have not felt this type of peace doing anything else. I have really started practicing making sure that I'm bringing myself back to whatever present moment I'm in. And one of the ways that I recommend to do this, if you've been following me on any other channel, is by doing a list of joys. So I firmly believe that all of us need more joy in our life, and that it's really important for us to add joy to our life. So one of the things that I did, and I just absolutely loved it, it made me feel so wonderful even making the list, is I sat down and just started to write out a list of things that bring me. So I started with this list, and I mean, I really thought about more of kind of the smaller everyday things, was a bit more of my focus. But I did things like I love coffee. Like, oh my goodness, I love coffee. And so having a good cup of coffee is on my list of joys. So is walking out in the sunshine, laughing with my kids. I like feeling the grass on my feet, nowhere else because it makes me itchy, but on my feet. So that's one that I really enjoy. I really enjoy to read. I enjoy baking. My list goes on and on. There's quite a bit that's there. And on my blog post on my website, which is ceciliahendricks.com, I have a blog post. I think it's titled The Day One. And that blog post actually shows kind of a snippet of my list of joys. And what I went and did from there was say, all right, I've got this list of things that bring me joy, they bring some happiness to my day. I'm going to start incorporating that into my day. So I'm going to pick one or two things and I'm going to start adding these to my day. I had found that I was really quite overwhelmed with the way that life was going. It wasn't necessarily that I was miserable. I was not in a position that I couldn't get out of bed. I've never been one to struggle with much depression, which I'm thankful for. And I also want to take a brief moment here to say that if you are struggling in any kind of way, if you consider harming yourself or others, if you struggle to get out of bed, you don't see the point, or, if you're just really overall feeling sad or depressed, please do seek professional help in your area. There's absolutely no shame to taking care of yourself. There are many fantastic therapists and ways to connect with amazing therapists, either, through Zoom or in person, that can really help you identify ways to start feeling better, even better than somebody online can. I would not recommend continuing to suffer in that cycle or feeling like there's something wrong with you or shameful in the way that you're feeling. Just please seek help. If you are struggling to find someone in your area and you need help, please definitely shoot me an email, unleashinghappiness@ceciliahendricks.com. I am not a therapist. I don't have a degree in any of this. I'm just sharing what I have found has helped me as I've continued through my journey. But if you reach out to me, I will definitely do all that I can to help you find resources in your area for you to get the help that can definitely help you start to feel better. So back to the list of joys. Once I took a look at those, I said, I need to start adding this more to my days. I'm overwhelmed. I'm spending most of my time trying to figure out how to do work, get the kids where they need to go, clean the house, actually shower, take care of myself. I wanted to feel attractive. I'm a woman that definitely likes to be in touch with her sensuality and feel pretty, and definitely, feel like I smell nice and I look nice and my clothes are together. And sometimes trying to get all of that together was very overwhelming. And I just found like I didn't have much time for myself, even though I'm a very early riser. I tend to wake up very early in the morning, and I had time to myself in the morning. I wasn't utilizing that time well. I was more just kind of sitting and scrolling on my phone. I would read a book for a while. And so even though I was awake, I just didn't find that I was using my time. So that was why I wanted to add some of these joys to my day, some things that would just bring me little bits of happiness, but in the everyday. So I'm not trying to do something that's like a fake gratitude. I'm not trying to find something of like, oh, even though I'm overwhelmed, I'm going to do my list of gratitudes, because yes, I have a ton to be grateful for. It wasn't that I wasn't grateful, but I was still overwhelmed and just feeling like I didn't have my own sense of identity, and I wasn't able to really separate that out and make sure that I was enjoying my days. So as I add those to my days, what I do that's really important part of this is I really immerse myself into it. So I start to pay attention to my senses in that moment of whatever joy I've added. And it doesn't matter which one it is. If it's taking a bubble bath, then I'm going to sit and think about how the warmth of the water feels against my skin. What is it that I'm able to smell? I love using like bath bombs and bubble bath and etc. And so I would pay attention to what are the actual scents that I can pick up here. I would usually make myself a drink, either sometimes it was water, sometimes it was a glass of wine or a cocktail, to go sit in the tub. So I would drink that and really kind of consider how it tasted. How does it feel going down my throat? Can I actually kind of feel when it hits my belly? And then I would pay attention to the things that I could see. I am definitely a woman who has struggled with body image. I think I mentioned earlier that, I've struggled a bit with kind of perfectionism in my life. And if my body was not perfect, I did not feel like it was great. And I really struggled with that. So when I would be in the tub or in those moments, I would spend time thinking about things that I really like about my body. I have this tattoo that goes down my right thigh that I'm absolutely obsessed with. It's a tattoo that me and my daughter got together. My mom went with me. My sister-in-law went with me. These are all people that I deeply love and care about. And so the tattoo has some like really cool meaning, but I also really like the way that it looks. And so I would pay attention to like, I really like the way that my thigh looks with this tattoo. I really like how my toes look because I just painted them, and even the parts of me that maybe I've struggled with, like my belly, I would, kind of pay attention to the fact that I kind of like sometimes when my belly is a little squishy. I think that I'm, soft and cuddly. And that doesn't mean that at all times I'm like super happy with this part of me. I think that that's human. I don't want to fall into like this like toxic positivity of forced feelings. These ways of like adding joys to your day, becoming much more present in that moment and feeling that joy actually removes this toxic positivity that I think runs rampant in a lot of kind of the mindset, law of assumption, law of attraction communities, where folks are telling you, well, you need to just be grateful, and you need to do your gratitude list, and you need to be thankful for everything. Well, there are some things that I may not see how to be thankful in them. And I especially saw that at the beginning of my journey where I'm like, you want me to be thankful for this? I'm stressed out. I don't like this. What I have learned though, and this has been the most amazing mindset shift, and I don't recommend forcing this, just allow it to start to naturally happen. But what's so amazing to me was that I found that slowly my thought process, even on what would be a considered negative event or emotion, became much more curious instead. So if I have something that's a negative reaction to any event in my life, I really lean in. Maybe sometimes I need a little bit of time before I can do this, and that's okay. But I lean into, why did I feel that way? What is it that this is teaching me about my current life reactions that is something that I can use to learn and grow from? I'm very connected to my spirituality. I think God is in absolutely everything. There is nothing in this world that is not God. And I firmly believe that. I believe that God is inside me. I believe that God is inside you. God is personified in absolutely everything. And it is the most beautiful thing in the world. Like, I cannot express how beautiful I find this. And so when I have this kind of reaction, I'm looking at it more of like a learning. Why am I having this reaction? Is it something that I want to change, or is it normal? Because, or not, I shouldn't say normal, or is it something I want to change, or is it something I want to embrace? So a negative reaction could be lashing out in anger, right? We've used anger as an example multiple times in this episode, but lashing out could be a reaction to anger. Okay. But that anger could be because someone did something to my child. And I don't see that as a negative. So like, I'm going to continue behaving in that way. I'm not going to get rid of that. And I'm okay with that. I can identify what I'm feeling. I can also find ways that for me being a, person in the community and society who would prefer to not get arrested, I can say this is a way that I need to handle that reaction so that I don't end up arrested, right? I want to look at my consequences of what would happen. But at the same time, I'm not going to get rid of the lashing out and the anger that comes from something with my child. So that's where I'm saying, it's one thing to identify it, but don't always name everything as so negative. Start to lean into the curiosity part of it. What can you learn about yourself based on this reaction that you've had? And something else that I remind myself of a lot, and I don't know, if you've read A Course in Miracles, this is something that has kind of come up a few times in reading that, is that nothing actually has meaning until we assign the meaning. And I remember when I first read that thinking, what the heck? Okay, wait a minute. Yes, it does. Until you really stop and think about it. And no, it doesn't. Everything is assigned meaning by you. You assign whether it's good, bad, indifferent, whatever it is. That is assigned by you within that moment. And this is extremely freeing, because the more that you start to look at stuff in this is what it is, and I don't want to assign it as bad, I don't want to assign it as negative, because it's teaching me about myself. So when I have a reaction or I have a continued thought, another way to look at this is that shows me how I identify. It shows me what type of state I am actually dwelling in. And I want to take this back a little bit. I want to make sure that I'm making sense here. If I have a reaction to, let's say, a person, like let's say there's a friend of mine, and I send that friend a message and they don't respond and they leave me on read. If my reaction is automatically to fly off the handle and be so upset, oh my gosh, they hate me, I knew it, they've been a fake friend, they couldn't wait to get rid of me, yada, 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 whatever I can make up in my head that is this like spiral of, whatever is wrong in the world with this event because I was left on read, is reflective of the state that I'm in. That's not a confident person. That's not someone who trusts that their friends deeply love and adore them and are there for them. That's someone who's stressed out that they're not being loved and they're not being reflected that love. Where on the other side, if I send a friend a message and they leave me on read, I may not even notice that I've been left on read, or I'll notice it and think, oh man, they must be like right in the middle of something, or maybe they were driving and they looked at that at a stoplight, but they'll respond to me later, not too worried about it. Those are two very different identities and very different states. And you can really start to identify where you are based on your reactions. If you're spending all day, saying to yourself with affirmations that you're kind of emptying, parroting to yourself of, oh, my friends adore me, my friends adore me, I'm adored by my friends, I'm adored by my friends. And you don't believe that because this is the reaction that you've had, is this like freak out moment of being left on read and deciding I knew it, like I keep trying to change this, but my friends hate me. That's a very clear indication of where you're actually dwelling, and the process that you're going through right there is going to show you like, hey, here's where I am. This is what I need to pay attention to. Okay, so now that we've talked about what are states, identity, and even ways to take a look inside yourself at the way that you're reacting, what your daily habits are, how your kind of emotional reactions are to the things that are happening to you in life, to identify where you are in your state and what identity you are identifying with. Although maybe it was not my best sentence ever, but that's all right. The next step is to start deciding what it is that you would like to change. So we all fall into habit loops. I've been reading The Power of Habit, which I just find to be a phenomenal book. If you have not picked that one up, I highly recommend it. And we all fall into habit loops. And these habit loops can be a physical thing that we're doing, like going to the kitchen to snack when we're not hungry. It can be a emotional state. So something triggers you and happens, and you kind of go down like an emotional rabbit hole, which is a habit that you've created. So it can be either of those. And the important thing is to start interrupting those habits, the routine that's within them. So the habit loop starts with like a cue or a craving, right? And so you need to kind of just keep that in mind. We're not going to identify those quite yet, but keep those in mind. And then you fall into the routine. So if you think about driving home from work, and I'm sure that we've all been in this position if you're of driving age or if you drive on a regular basis, where you get in your car and all of a sudden you're home and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't even recall making this drive. I know that I did it. Clearly I did it well. I didn't hit anything. I didn't run into anybody, but I've done this drive so many times that now I'm like I just did it on autopilot. And that's your brain's way of being like more efficient, right? Once a habit is created, you'll naturally fall into that habit. That also makes it a little bit of a pain in the tush to change it, but all of them can be changed. You just want to interrupt that routine. So a morning routine is kind of the prime example for me. I am totally in the importance of morning routine boathouse. I will say that until the day that I die. Definitely want to get onto a morning routine. I will definitely be doing an episode around morning routines because I do find them that important. But so if your morning routine is to wake up and feel like you doom and gloom and you are sad about how your day is going to go, and you grab your phone and you start scrolling and you lay in bed and you scroll for an hour, then you maybe get up and rush to work because you're already running late. That is a prime example of the fact that you have a cue, waking up, and you have a routine, grabbing your phone and going through scrolling and allowing other people to kind of get into your energy and direct your thoughts for that day. So you can interrupt that and create a new routine. So your cue is still going to be, you're going to wake up in the morning. Like that's all our hope for each day, right? You're going to wake up tomorrow morning. So you're going to wake up, but put your phone somewhere else. Replace where your phone is with something else. Either put a book, a glass of water. You can put, what is something else I've done? Oh, my journal, like especially when I wanted to get into journaling more. So I put my phone under my nightstand. So for me, just having it not where I would normally reach for it was enough of a trigger to be like, oh yeah, I'm doing something different today. I'm not going to get on my phone right away. I'm going to spend at least an hour in the morning not on my phone. But having that interruption of your routine allows you to kind of start creating that new habit. So I highly recommend that. We'll go more into this in some other episodes coming up. I also talk about it a bit on my YouTube channel. Please definitely come follow me there if you would like to. So it's also Unleashing Happiness with Cecilia Hendricks. Definitely know that I talk about stuff like this there as well, just in a bit smaller of snippets. I think there is real importance to paying attention to your habits, looking at the way that you identifying the states that you're dwelling in, and then learning how to work with yourself and your mindset to change your life and redirect your thoughts. And I think we're all more than capable of doing that. Trust me, if I'm able to do it, who is a notorious mind arguer with people, you can do it. I have absolute faith in you for that. So really start by just taking a look at maybe like one or two habits that you have now that you would kind of like to interrupt. Maybe a morning routine, getting ready for bed. A big one for mine was washing my face. I kind of continued to brush off washing my face at night before bed. And it was something that I really wanted to do. It was a way for me to show myself love, to show myself care. And it was something really important to me. So I started to interrupt my routine, which was a little bit more difficult for me at night than honestly I found in the morning. And I think to each person it's going to be different what ends up being harder or easier. But so I interrupted my routine at night that I put like a little note on my mirror that reminded me to wash my face. It was something very simple, but that interrupted enough when I would go into bed or go into the bathroom to brush my teeth. I'd be like, oh yeah, I also want to wash my face. There are still times to this day that I try to brush off washing my face. I don't know why, but I definitely do, where I'm like, oh, I don't have to do that. I can wait till later. So I share that to say, don't expect to have something change overnight. It does take some time, but that's okay. Like, it's okay to keep going back to these things. So I did want to do kind of a small recap of some of the stuff that we've talked about so far in this episode, because I've noticed it's already getting quite long. It's amazing how long I can talk essentially to myself, but I guess I shouldn't be all that surprised by that, but I still kind of am. So one thing is that a state, if you're following someone like Neville Goddard and you are confused about maybe what a state means, a state is truly your identity, the way that you see your self, and a lot of things can kind of build up to make your identity. The second piece of that is to do a list of joys and really learn how to become present in the moment while you're enjoying those list of joys. A third thing, even though apparently I'm not going to go in order, is to work on some of your emotional intelligence, starting with name it, tame it, and using breathing exercises to calm yourself down when you're in an emotional moment so that you can take a time out and really lean into being very curious about the reason that you're feeling that way and what does it say about your identity and the state that you're dwelling in. The fourth one is to start paying attention to some habit loops that you have. So you can only change something once you've become aware of it. I actually hear that on the Sad to Savage podcast quite a bit. And I really appreciate when she says that because it's true. So once you become aware of the habits, it's much easier to start to identify what routines you're falling in and what you would like to change. So by doing this too, you're actually shifting your state. The more that you focus on your emotional intelligence, you're focusing on the habits of what you're doing and you're working to change those, you're actually slowly shifting your state. The other thing that I found that I hope you find is true for you as well, is that the more that I did this, the more that I was like thankful and felt gratitude and felt at peace that was not forced. I spent a lot of time when I first started in this journey of almost like forcing gratitude, where I was like, well, I have to feel thankful for this. And again, there's tons that I'm thankful for. I mean, I can do a gratitude list that's pages long. I've got my family, I've got clean water, I've got a beautiful freaking home, I've got a fantastic dog. I don't know if you've heard him snoring in the background at all on this show, but I find it quite adorable that he's been laying behind me snoring this entire time. I have the most remarkable, beautiful friends. I will talk about them, I'm sure, a lot on this podcast. I think very highly of my friends. I think very highly of my family. It's not that I didn't have things to be grateful for, but I didn't know how to figure out how to be grateful for the parts of my life that maybe were not going the way that I wanted them to. So I could be grateful for a bunch of things and still want some kind of change. And by shifting to being curious about that change and how I'm creating that cycle, I started to actually get grateful for the parts that I felt did not go the best in my life. And this was like the most mind-blowing, like, holy cow, I can't believe that I've missed this part of it. But in becoming curious and really looking and leaning into, what is this teaching me about myself? What is this telling me about me? Why is this having the type of reaction that it is? Because sometimes I didn't even understand, like, why am I so upset about this? Why am I struggling to let this go? And it created this peace for me and this gratitude for me that I had not felt before. And I certainly hope that you're able to find the same. So I appreciate you being here. I hope that you enjoyed this episode. I will definitely be sharing. My intention is to share a new episode for the podcast every Friday. Again, I also have my YouTube channel, which is Unleashing Happiness. My intention there is to release 3 videos per week. They'll be kind of talking about the points that I have in the podcast, just in shorter kind of snippets. I like to do a lot of shorts there. I've actually really enjoyed doing the shorts. I also have an Instagram channel, which is Unleashing Happiness Podcast on Instagram. And then you can also check out my website, ceciliahendricks.com. So again, I am so excited that you're here. I hope that you found this awesome. If you listened to me the first time on Spotify, I hope that the sound is better this time. I'm very happy that I have this set up, because I definitely think it's going to be better than the first thing that I put out. But again, we're learning and growing all together. So until next week, I hope that you have a beautiful week. I hope that you find joy in your everyday, and I can't wait to see you again. And of course, please reach out if you have anything to share. I would absolutely love to hear from you. Hey y'all, thank you again for joining me for this podcast today. And if you're new here, welcome. I'm extremely happy to have you here. It's a very exciting journey that we're on. I wanted to do a quick reminder that if you want to visit my website, you can do so at ceciliahendricks.com. And you can also find me on YouTube at Unleashing Happiness.